Thanks, Steve. So now you're representing an artist. The artist is signed to the record company. Steve has negotiated a great deal. And now, of course, the artist has to make records. And they have to turn to a music producer to do that. So let's talk about what is a music producer. Well, a music producer is an individual or a company of individual who oversees the music creation process. The music producer can actually either compose the music, be the creator of the music in certain art forms like genres of music such as urban music, hip hop, dance music. The producer actually composes the music, or the producer can oversee the whole record making process. So they don't necessarily have to play an instrument, but they can put all the pieces together to create a great song. Now, what is a producer agreement or contract? Well, a producer agreement or contract is a legal document, obviously, between a record label or a recording artist and a music producer, in which the music producer agrees to either create or oversee the creation of music. So let's discuss the basic terms of a producer agreement. The employment, the term, the services, right? The producer is going to be contracted to produce a certain number of songs, and those songs have to be, or those master recordings, I should more accurately say, have to be recorded to the artist or the record label's satisfaction. The term will usually expire upon the satisfactory delivery of the master recording to the artist or record label. And the services that the producer will render will include booking the studio time, hiring session musicians, recording, engineering sometimes, and mixing the master recordings, etc. Let's talk about advances. So, advances, this is how the producer gets money in their pocket. The advance is really a prepayment of producer royalties, and that amount is going to be based on the commercial success or lack thereof of the producer. So if you're a new producer, 3,000 to 5,000 is usually the norm, depending on the genre of music. If you're an established producer, it used to be 50, 75, 100,000. Those numbers have been a little significantly decreased because, as Steve said in the last presentation, the record labels aren't making that much money, but it's usually a nice six-figure sum if you're a major producer. The advance is usually paid 50% upon execution of the producer agreement, and the balance after the record has been satisfactorily delivered and any samples have been cleared and all the necessary paperwork has been delivered to the record label. The advance is going to be recoupable from the producer's royalty. Let's get to producer royalties. So producer royalties, we'll go through this kind of quickly. Generally, 1% to 5%, with most producers being paid general producer royalty of 2 to 3%. It used to be at the standard retail list price, but now it's PPD, or published price to dealers, is the standard that's being used. I always like to say that 1% is roughly equivalent to 10 cents. So if it's a 3-point royalty, it's about 30 cents that the producer is going to be getting. The producer royalty is paid from the artist's all-in royalty rate. In Steve's earlier presentation, I think the artist was getting, what, 17%? 17%. So if the producer is getting 3 or 4 points, is 3 from 17, the artist puts 14 to 13% in their pocket. And the producer royalty is paid retroactively from the record one. And it's paid retroactively because record labels would pay the producer on their first record sold after recoupment of recording costs at the net artist rate. So that's the artist's all-in royalty rate, excluding the producer's royalty rate. The producer actually gets paid on a better basis than the artist.
Do you know why? I heard a story about why this is.
Please.
Okay. The Chipmunks were a band that were composed of not ordinary chipmunks, but 3 executives at Warner Music. And when they negotiated their deal as producers of the Chipmunks,
right,
they got from record one, and they established a norm from there.
Since.
That's what I heard.
Didn't know that. Learned something new today. A producer, you want to negotiate an escalation of the producer royalty rate. So if it's getting 3%, you want to get a half-point bump on gold. It used to be gold, 500,000. Now it's 600,000 units. And another half-point bump if record sales exceed 1.2 million, okay? So ultimately, a 3% royalty will end up being a 4% royalty, and a 4% royalty will end up being a 5% royalty, based on commercial success of the particular artist. You also want to make sure that you seek direct payment of the producer royalty from the record label via a letter of direction that will be signed by the artist, so that the producer doesn't have to try to chase after the recording artist to get his money. Generally speaking, you should also make sure that the artist signs a sound exchange letter of direction, and to make sure that the producer is also a member of Sound Exchange. So this producer royalty is akin to a residual payment for the producer that can last a very long time if the record continues to sell. Another provision in the contract you want to negotiate, and Steve touched upon it also, is the mechanical license provision. The producer, again, if they've composed the music themselves, they will be the controller of that composition, so it's called the Control Compositions Clause. And they're going to license their portion of the song to the artist or record label. Again, if they're new, it's 3/4 of the minimum statutory rate of 9.1 cents. That equals 6.82 cents. If they're a new producer, if they're a seasoned or veteran producer, it's more likely that they will get the 100% full statutory rate. I've given you guys a mechanical split sheet form, and I always say that's the producer's secret weapon. And what that form does is it apportions the ownership of the composition, so that when the producer is in a studio session with the artist, and the artist is the writer, and they may have another writer, another producer, it's very, very important that you advise your producer clients to make sure that they get this mechanical split sheet form filled out, which basically breaks down who did what and who owns what of the song, so that when it's time for payment to be made, it's not going to be a problem. Generally speaking, I've represented clients who have not been able to get any sort of mechanical royalty or producer royalty because the record label can't figure out who owns what of the song. Mm-hmm. So you want to make sure that's taken care of. To the extent that you can, negotiate the producer not being subject to the album cap. Good luck with that. Usually 11 songs on the album. And keep in mind that you'll see language in the producer agreement, work made for hire language. You want to be very clear that that relates to the sound recording or the master, the Pro Tool files, the WAV files. And you want to make sure that you exclude any underlying compositions, the copyright to the underlying compositions, which is the actual intellectual property of the song that the producers actually composed. All right, you want to make sure that that's an important distinction you want to negotiate. Another clause that you want to be aware of is the accounting and audit provisions that's going to be in the agreement. The producer will get a statement usually twice a year, 90 days after June 30th and December 31st. Note that there's a limited time for the producer to object to the accuracy of the statement. It's usually 2 to 3 years after receipt of the accounting statement. Also, make sure that there's a right to audit, and that's often limited to 1 year after an accounting statement is rendered. Most producers, generally speaking, won't necessarily see a royalty statement because the artist has yet to recoup their money. So it's usually the superstar producers that will be able to afford a forensic accountant to go and actually audit the record labels to see and make sure that they're getting what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to get. Representations and warranties. Be also aware that the producer has to represent and warrant that the song is original, but in some instances, the producer will sample a record. It's a necessary evil for certain music genres like hip hop, for example. You want to negotiate that the samples be taken off the top in calculating the ownership interest in the composition. So if a composition is worth 100% and a sample owner is requesting 50%, you don't want that taken out of the producer's share of the composition. You want to take it off the top, and then the remaining 50% will be split up according to whatever the split is going to be in the mechanical split sheet form that hopefully your producer will fill out. And finally, credit. Credit is everything in this business, so you want to make sure that the credit provision reads that the producer will be afforded a credit on liner notes of records in physical format and wherever metadata permits, and in all 1/2 page or larger advertisements in national trade publications.